Welcome back to Feet on the Ground. Stories that need to be told and stories that need to be heard. In today's episodes, we're going to talk about something that sounds incredibly simple when we say it in project meetings or in investment committees: local recruitment. If you work in infrastructure or development projects, or even in companies that you're setting up, you probably heard this many times. Hire locally, create local jobs. It sounds obvious. It sounds straightforward. But is it? To explore this today, I'm joined by Regina Macuacua, who has spent many years working on exactly these issues. And she has seen firsthand what happens when local recruitment meets real-world conditions. Regina, welcome. Before we dive into the topics, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Patricia. So, Regina Macuacua is a young Mozambican, mother of a wonderful 16-year-old girl. And I'm someone that comes from a background who is very deeply and passionate about people and connections, and coming from a context where I got to see day-to-day challenges and the resilience of communities. And that has ended up shaping how I position myself, but also the principles to which I live by. On a professional side, I work on social development. I'm an agronomist by background with a master's in community development. So over the years, I have found myself drawn to roles where I will bridge gaps between companies and communities. And I care a lot about making sure that local communities, or people with which I work and engage with, are not just included, but most importantly, are genuinely empowered.
You mentioned that you live by certain principles. What are those?
Integrity, fairness, and very humble. So to me, those principles, they are what guide my day-to-day and how I present myself and interact with people.
Today we're talking local recruitment. Again, from the outside, it seems very simple. You put a project or you put a company in a place, and you start looking around who is most available. Why is this such a hard thing to do?
That's an interesting question because, at first glance, it sounds very, very straightforward, right? But really, there are so many nuances linked to that. There are so many dynamics associated to that. And you find yourself navigating through social dynamics from aspects like trust, aspects of fairness, aspects of who gets to be selected and why. It's not as straightforward as one might think.
Give me some examples of where this might not be as straightforward that you have seen in your work life.
You see, for example, in my work life, we work a lot through community leaders because they are respected people chosen by their communities that they trust, and they believe and trust that they will represent them and their interests. The recruitment process was discussed in a forum with local leaders and government, and we agreed on the process that was in place. So when you work together in collaboration with a person like that, it gives you already the comfort that what we will be doing together will be to the benefit to the communities. But then you end up with a situation where this very same person that is there to represent them uses his position of trust to gain personal benefits out of a process like recruitment, for example. So if you are not in his good books as a community member, you end up losing on that opportunity. So that is the type of social dynamics that you manage and you need to deal with as part of this local recruitment process. And that's the reality that we find on the ground.
And maybe let me be simplistic in the sense, well, why don't I just simply go around him and just go directly to the people? Why not do that?
Because as I said, remember, when you are in rural settlements, you have hierarchic structures that govern how a community functions and operates. It's difficult for you as a developer to go out there and sit in a village with more than 700, 1,000 people. Imagine having to manage a recruitment process in a context like that. That's where the role of a community leader, a community representative, or a community committee actually comes in, because it's really to help govern the engagement processes. But then when those ones do not have the interest of the wider community, which is the mandate that was given to them when they were chosen, that's when you then start to deal with the challenge.
And do you have any things that you thought this is simple enough, but it turned out not to be?
Yes, definitely. How we manage the expectations, how do we navigate through the positions of power, and how do we avoid that those affects the fairness and the transparency of our process, and communication also, skills gaps. So all those social dimensions are part of what was really quite underestimated from our side when we started our process. I was of the impression from the moment you have a very good open relationship in terms of communication, in terms of fairness of explaining how the process will go with representatives of the community, that they will actually be there to really take care of the interest of their people. So that's really one of the biggest aspects that we underestimated.
And when you say underestimation, was it more of a timing that you underestimated, or was it also more of an quality and quantity of engagement?
Yes, I would say both. Exactly. I would say both. You learn with experience. So that's where time aspect comes in, right? You're trying something that you are believing in, and it ends up showing you that that's not the right way to go for it. So then you need to really quickly kick into your problem resolution mode and try to find a better way of doing it, right? Communication was direct with community leaders, and that's what we were trusting, the system that already existed. So you are integrating your processes in a system, in a governance system that already exists, really to have a smooth a transition and a smooth way of engagement with the communities. And again, as part of building trust, right? So the better way is to work with the trusted people. And that was really the basis from where we were coming from.
And do you have maybe some examples in your experience and that you might be able to share?
So that's an interesting one because they are quite a lot. But I think one that really stood out associated to this, the moment you're recruiting and you're happy because you have found this group of 10 young people from your local communities, and you're believing that everyone is happy about the opportunity of being exposed to real work and get the opportunity for skills development that comes together with employment at an organization, right? So on the day that you're doing induction, explaining to them what is going to happen, how much they're going to be paid, to make everything very clear, people stand and look at you and say, I'm sorry, we have a problem. Based on what you're explaining, the time that we will be working, the money we paid to get to this job will not compensate for what we are going to be paid. So we are already going to work in deficit because we have been charged X amount by our leaders to select us and indicate us for this position, but the salary that we will be paid will not cover for the cost that we had to go and lend money to pay to them. So all your principles kick into you. People are seeking for a job because they don't have the money. So how will a leader, a trusted person, charge you to allow you to have that opportunity, right? It is difficult to understand how that is actually possible. So you start questioning, are we all walking towards the same direction? Are our objectives aligned? Where did you fail in terms of communication, in terms of awareness, in terms of engagement? So you question yourself in all those aspects. So then you sit with the process that instead of benefiting people, you understand it's actually in their detriment. So how do you position yourself based on that? How do you go to this leader, this government representative, and explain to him that what he is doing is wrong? And on the other side, how do you deal with the aspect of how that makes you as an organization look? Because then people also think you are associated to that type of behavior. You need to stop and think, how do I fix the problem I have caused? Because that is the position that you then put yourself.
And I imagine that this kind of hits you at the fairness because you created a project using actually best practices, but you did not foresee this underlying thing that was happening behind. Can you share how did you fix or how did you try again?
So I will be very honest with you, Patricia. It's very sensitive. It took us about 3 years to fix the problem. So imagine you sit for 3 years having to deal with complaints from the community because this community leader is linked to a government structure that is a formal government structure. How do you penetrate that formal government structure to explain to government at the district level that this behavior is wrong and that in first hand, based on hierarchy, it needs to be dealt with through that existing governance hierarchy. And we had to take a very strong stand to the point where we stopped the recruitment for about 6 months. 6 months, close to almost a year. So as you stop it, you create another problem because now you are also limiting the new opportunities for people and you're keeping the same ones just renewing their contract. So you need to create another problem to really fix the root cause of the problem and get you to the right position. So that's really the process we had to enter in. So we stopped local recruitment. We had to manage expectations. We had to get to a point where we had to change our engagement strategy. We took into our power the fact that recruitment is still a responsibility of the company and we still have the power to decide how we want to do it. Yes, best practice suggests that you engage, but we had to take that step and say, we will not look at that to resolve this particular problem. So we came up with a different process, which is the one that we are using up to now, whereby the local recruitment is done through a draw. So exactly what you mentioned at the beginning. What we do now, we go out into the village. There is a communication that goes out in the community radio. We also fix an advert saying we will be coming to recruit on day X at X time. And we set the criteria. Everyone that is in the age of working, that has X, Y, Z skills that are required, the need skills required for the position, is invited to participate. Each village has a specific place where communities meet. So that is usually the place we go because it's known. We arrive there out of courtesy. We inform the local government. We inform the village leader that we will be recruiting in your village, right? Again, respecting the governance structure. And we arrive with 2 boxes for females and males, because that was also another issue. Only males will be recruited in the past. Now there is very fair female and male box. We come with little voting bulletins, let's put it like that. So little papers that we issue. So we arrive and we explain again what the position is, for how long they will work. Again, all the communication very transparently. So everyone that applies knows what to expect. What we require is that you can read and write. You need to be a resident of this village. You need to be able to prove that with your ID card. So who wants is issued with a small little ticket to write his name and a phone number, put it in the box, in the respective box. When everyone has done it, at the same moment, in the same place, we do not leave the village. So then we call a child that is from the village that is usually there. The tickets are not collected by anyone from our team. You just want to really make it completely transparent. So we choose one of the children that is sitting there. We turn the box. He takes 1 paper at a time and we call the names. If we need 10 people, and it's also explained at the beginning, it's 10 people we need. So we will choose 6 male and 4 females. And then we start the draw. And everyone sees, and the list is produced there in an open, transparent way, everyone knowing exactly who the person is. If the name that is called, the community says, this person does not live here. And again, the ID proves where you live because we check all the documents exactly at that place. So everyone knows very clearly who was chosen and genuinely agrees that he or she is from the village. And that's the list we live then with. And then people are called and then the process continues with induction.
What if they don't have IDs?
That's a very good question because that is actually one of the challenges that this new system brought us and brought to light, right? Usually in rural communities, people wouldn't have an ID. But as part of the work that we have done was actually to bring brigades, mobile brigades, that would issue IDs. So partnership with the authorities, and then they would have people sitting and issuing IDs. So as part of this process, we are reinstating that, right? Currently, it is a challenge, but we are standing the grounds that we want a person to be able to prove with the formal document that he is who he is saying he is. Because we have 10 Mariamu Momadis. If you don't have an ID, another Mariamu Momadi can come up and replace you there, and then we don't have control.
One of the challenges that you underestimated was the IDs. What about when you are providing that recruitment via a subcontractor? Do you also then tell them to use the same recruitment process that you are using, or do they come with their own? And normally, I would imagine that subcontractors sometimes might even, depending on the work, bring people from outside. How do you deal with that dynamic?
So we incentivize the local contractors to also use the same process. We have very good examples. Some are very diligent and actually ask us to support and be part of the process, right? Which works very well. So, and that is one of the requests that the community has actually made to us to say, with this new system, we want you also to work towards getting all your contractors to do the same way. They give you examples of who is actually doing it as we do, which is very good. It shows that people know and that people are aware of what is happening, and they want everyone to do the same. As part of our contractual process with the contractors, we have clauses in the contract where they are forced to a certain quota of local recruitment. They're allowed to bring positions from outside, like supervisory positions, because it's still their business. So we play fair also on that one, right? It's fair to allow them that certain leadership positions they will still bring from their own company, but all the rest of the skills need to be recruited locally, right? To make sure that there is an effect from our presence, then we have a much bigger impact in the community. So that is how we deal with that, especially with our contractors.
And Regina, going back a little bit, you changed the recruitment process to be more fair and transparent. Did that not have some political sensitivities, but did that not cause issues from where they might say, you are now taking authority from us. You are going against our own principles, our community way of doing things. Did you have any pushback?
Thank you for asking that question because, yes, it did happen. We had a lot of pushback from the village leaders. They complained. They were not happy about the change in the process. Let me give you an example to make this easier to understand. We go to a village and we have 12 vacancies to recruit. So the proposal was that we would allow that from those 12, 2 should be directly still awarded to the village leader for him to choose who he would like to get employed. And then we ran the process with the other 10. We did not agree with that because it will continue to be a way to allow corruption in the process. And that is what we wanted to eliminate. So we told them all we're doing is protect everyone, especially leadership. As leaders, we cannot be associated to corrupt behaviors. And from their side, they are allowed to apply too. And we gave examples of some of their relatives that were actually selected through that transparent process. So to prove that the process is fair for everyone, the fact of us being a leader, being in a position of power, shouldn't be for us to take advantage of that in detriment to our communities. So we are continuing with the process. And as I explained, the way to still show appreciation and recognize their leadership role, they are informed. The advert that needs to be fixed in the public spaces still goes to the leader so that he is the one who will actually convey the message to his community. Yes, we still do it through the radio to make sure that even if he doesn't fix it up, the information will still get to the community. So he takes part in the process, which is his role, is to take part, to ensure that he shows support, to ensure that he is there to prove that, yes, my people are getting the benefit. That's what we want with the process.
I feel that you have an advantage that others might have less of, which is you have a long-term commitment and a long-term relationship. What about when you have 3 months to come in, do local recruitment, do your work, and you don't have that much time to set up a system.
That's a tough one, really tough one. Yes, Patricia, I will be, it's very difficult. I would really tell you, you need to start by understanding who the people are with whom you want to work with. And for that, you need the benefit of time. Just for that, you need the benefit of time. If your starting point at that is that, and you're already challenged with time, it makes it even much more complex than the complexity that we had to deal with, right? So honestly speaking, I really will know how you would navigate through that, in that process with the limitation of time. The only thing that really jumps into my head is, for me, it's really trust your principles. It will bring a certain degree of trust into the process, even if it is someone that we do not know. So really, that's the only thing that comes to my mind now that you ask me the question that I would recommend in
Mm.
a scenario that you just described.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I agree with you. You need to bring in your principles to create trust, the transparency. And I think you need to do as much as you can with what you have, knowing that there will be limitations. But I think very much what you mentioned that, however, if you put in your own principles onto the process and those get translated, it's easier for you to create that trust with communities. And once you've changed the process, have you ever had positive feedback?
Yes.
You
And
did?
it is
Tell me
it
about
is
it.
absolutely, how can I say, it just overwhelms you. Let me just tell you the type of feedback we are getting now. When we started this process, the second village where we went and we recruited based on this new process, I got a text from a young boy in the village, in one of the villages, and he said, Regina, I just wanted to tell you first to congratulate the organization for the change that you have done to the recruitment process. I participated, I wasn't chosen, but I'm happy because the process was fair. And I could see for the very first time my neighbors and people that I live with in this village benefit from those opportunities. So that was the very first message we received as the very first feedback from someone in the village. And it is overwhelming because it's someone that didn't got the job but was still happy with the process. You cannot
That's
expect
powerful.
you cannot want anything better than that. So
Yeah,
yeah, and
that is definitely powerful.
that's really it was very powerful for us. You get the comfort that you're doing the right thing for people and you're doing it right.
Is there anything that you would wish that maybe developers or investors or contractors or even your own the organization would better understand so that it would make your life a little bit easier?
The first thing I would say is if all of us recognize that local recruitment is not about hiring, it's actually a social risk. Because if you put it like that, it elevates it to another level. It brings attention to that process to a leadership management level so that whatever policies we create, they will be aligned with the company strategy itself. If you look at it as hiring, we need people, we will go and collect them, we done. That's not what local recruitment is. It is a social risk. If you don't look at it like that, you will underestimate the challenges associated to it. You will overlook some of the details, the small details that make a big difference. And I think that's the biggest learning that I got when I look back. If we had recognized at the very beginning recruitment as a social risk, maybe we wouldn't have made all the mistakes we have made in the past. We would have positioned ourselves differently earlier in that process. And secondly, I would also say, and again, it will link to what I just said now, we should be prepared to invest in training and capacity building because we all run to say the skills are not available. No, 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 no. The potential is there. The experience is not there because people need the opportunity. We provide opportunities. We need to be prepared to invest in upskilling based on what exists in terms of skills and look in the right place. No one is there that will know and no one will have the skills. That's a complete wrong misperception that we all have. And we dive in with that thinking that we will always find skilled people outside. They're all sitting there. They just need the opportunity. They just need the chance.
I really love how you put this, that local recruitment, local employment is not just, it's not a hiring process, it's a social risk. And yet we look at it, the majority of us look at it, including myself, as a recruitment and as a hiring process and not a social risk from the start. So I really, really like that mind shift because it is, I agree with you 100%. Uh, and also what you mentioned, I've also heard that many times. There's the skills are not here. And it's also what you said that no, they're not here. The potential is here. You're just missing out if you don't take that potential and turn it into something. That is quite powerful, Regina. I think that this is absolutely right. Is there one thing that I have not asked that you think we should be speaking about on this that we have not spoken?
Nothing that comes to my mind. It was quite a beautiful and insightful conversation. When you're in the process and you have to deal with it, you never have the chance to do what I did today, which is, sit. It's about reflecting about it, right? When I talk to someone on it, it really goes through my mind and then I reflect about it. So it was a beautiful exercise in that sense for me too, to really revisit from where we come from and, do a retrospect about it. So it was really, really very insightful. I'm really happy that I had this conversation with you.
Well, I'm happy you enjoyed it because I had a lot of fun and I think this is so important.
So
My last question to you. You have been working a lot with people that are in impoverished situations that have very little. How has this work changed you as a person?
okay, uh, it's not a question that is easily to be responded. I think one thing that I always go back to, it's my work has allowed me to really validate that the principles to which I live by, they are very strong principles. And I'm proud of myself for living by to those principles. It's one of the aspects that always comes back to me whenever I come back from work, when I sit with people, when I sit on the ground with the ladies on the mats and we're talking, it always comes back to me that the principles you live by, don't think they are meaningless, right? And as I said, they have shaped the way in which I conduct my work, but also in which I live as a person on a day-to-day basis. That's number one. Social is always seen as a soft skill. It's the soft side of things, right? It's Regina and her people. Okay. So the ability that you have in a position like mine to influence leadership, to acknowledge that the soft side of things, how it's perceived, is actually the core of the sustainability of your business. Your social license to operate lies on that. You can have all regulatory aspects, all of them compliant. If your social license to operate is weak, you have nothing. Your paper is meaningless. There's nothing you will do. And I have learned that my voice is important. It's important that I speak my mind because I have helped my organization to be better in that and to understand that and recognize that as one of the fundamental aspects of our business. And I'm very, very proud of that. Because from where we come from, we are a complete different organization.